Hey everyone, Scott here, and today in this video I just wanted to quickly go over the changes to the ban, limited and errata list that have just been announced. These were announced to go into effect next week, next Friday, so they go into effect at the same time that the 2021 anniversary box is to be released, although they did also announce that the anniversary box has been delayed in, I believe it was North America and Asia. So actually the only place that I think is still getting the anniversary box next Friday is Oceania. But yeah, to talk about the actual changes to the ban list, they've basically taken a stance of trying to curtail the amount of free play, aggressive free play. I believe they stated it as in the actual announcement post. And overall, when I look at the cards that are on this list, I think a lot of them are justified in being there. I mean, it's very easy for me to say that, because like only one of the decks I actually play has been hit by this, which was this Mecha Freezer here. But really, if you look at all these cards, the one thing they have in common is they facilitate a certain amount of free play. In the case of the Mecha Freezer, it lets you use extra cards for free, whereas everything else lets you either come into play as a battle card for free, or with these field cards down here, they let you play battle cards for free, or they did before the errata at least. So yeah, like I said, I believe most of these changes are justified. There's been a topic that's kind of been on my mind as something I maybe wanted to discuss in a future video, about the place that aggro has within this game. I was kind of thinking about it in light of kind of floodgates. I wanted to talk about their impact on the game. But yeah, to cover a little bit now, I guess, in this video, seeing as how Bandai are kind of cracking down on free plays, which I believe is the kind of thing in this game that facilitates kind of the need of us to have like floodgate cards. Basically, when it comes down to it, the fact that all battle cards, well, basically all battle cards in this game can attack the turn that they're played. There's no kind of summoning sickness. You combine that also with the fact that battles happen one at a time, unlike another game like, say, Magic, where you have to attack with everything at once. That is always going to bias the game towards aggro, in my opinion. I think there will always be decks out there whose game plan is just get as many different attacking threats on the board as you can, just go wide, just flood the board with battle cards, and just start swinging into your opponent as many times as you can. Your opponent really, at that point, either they can withstand all this kind of early game pressure, or they can't, and they just lose the game outright in the first 2, maybe 3 turns at the latest. And while I think there should always be a place for kind of aggro within the meta, I don't think the game should just be control versus control, or control versus combo. I think there is a place for aggro decks. But if it becomes a case where all the top decks are aggro decks, basically all games will come down to who is able to flood the board with the most kind of free play attacks the quickest. They'll be the person who wins. And basically at that point it becomes who draws the better opening hand. It's an aggro versus aggro matchup, and I draw 4 free plays on my first turn and you only draw 1. Then I'm probably going to win that game, just on the strength of my opening hand. And that is an issue for the game. You don't want the game to devolve into who has the better opening hand, because at that point it's just pure luck. There's like literally no skill involved at that point. So for Bandai to kind of ban or limit a lot of these aggressive free play cards makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. It's a step towards kind of rectifying kind of the state that the meta is in. Because also, if a lot of the top decks are aggro decks, it also pushes a lot of other decks out of the meta, or even other cards out of the meta, just for the fact that they have no way of really surviving a lot of early aggressive pressure efficiently. Like, obviously there are some cards and there are some decks that can withstand this kind of flood the board decks that we were seeing a lot of. So as painful as a lot of these changes are going to be, I think it is good for the overall health of the game going forward. So that's, I guess, kind of it for my overall thoughts about this ban list. I did want to talk a little bit individually about each card on the list. So first up we have Belmod. Like they stated, Belmod, the fact that it is a way for you to KO your own battle cards kind of allowed you to get around unique as a keyword. You could very easily, especially in the Dark Broly deck, play out a few cards with like 3 cards I believe Belmod needs that all have unique. You use them, you swing with them, and then you play Belmod, KO them all, and then you're able to go into more free play unique guys. So that kind of makes sense, and like they said, going forward, they just didn't want people to have a way of getting around the unique keyword, because obviously the place of unique within the game is for it to be kind of a drawback on some cards. So if you have a way of kind of getting around that very easily, which Belmod sort of does, it kind of removes unique's ability to be seen as a drawback on cards. Like I say, I think that makes sense as a ban. Mercenary Tower was another one. It's just like only ever used in the kind of decks I was talking about before, because you have to have 3 non-token battle cards out for it. Could often be used in conjunction with Belmod. You would get 3 battle cards out, play the Mercenary Tower, and then KO the 3 battle cards that you had for the Tower with Belmod, and that gives you even another attacking threat on the board. So Bardock the Resolute is now fully banned. In the last list it was added to the limited slot, so there's only 1 per deck, but now they've gone the extra step of just straight up banning it. So then we have Son Goku Power of Legends. Very similar to the Bardock in the sense that it was very easy for you to kind of get out. Just whenever your opponent dropped a card, it would come into play, and it's a 15k critical, which is like a lot to deal with, especially if your opponent can get this out potentially turn 1 in certain decks. So again, another one that kind of makes sense. Then we have the one that hurts me the most, which is the Mecha Freezer ban. I literally was, this is my Mecha Freezer deck here. I was literally just looking through it a couple of hours ago, just to double check I had it updated with a lot of the new cards that I wanted to use in light of Universe 9 Assemble being banned. So actually, when I first saw the ban list, I clicked on the image. I actually saw that Universe 9 Assemble was unbanned before I saw that Mecha Freezer was on the ban list. So I had a very kind of happy split second there where I was like, hey, I got Universe 9 Assemble back in Mecha Freezer. But no, I've added Mecha Freezer to the ban list. This, I believe, is the second reboot leader they've had to outright ban after Green Gohan that was banned on the last ban list. So yeah, that's 2 ban lists in a row they've had to get rid of rebooted leaders. I think they do still have a better track record overall. There's been about, what, 9 or 10 rebooted leaders? There was the 5 from set 9, Mecha Freezer, Bergamo and Announcer from set 12, I want to say, and Soul Striker, so I believe that's 10. And they've had to ban 2, which I guess compared to all the other leaders that we've had in the history of the game, they've only had to ban, I believe, 1 non-reboot leader, which was the Super Saiyan 3 from set 3, I believe it was, the Blue Goku, which was one of the ones they rebooted the same time they did with the Gohan. So yeah, in terms of like rebooted versus like all the other leaders, there's a much higher ban rate amongst rebooted leaders than there are of regular leaders. But I hope this doesn't scare Bandai off of doing more reboot leaders in the future. Oh, I just remembered the latest starter deck, the Mass Saiyan reboot. So that's 11 rebooted leaders, I believe, unless again I'm missing another one. Yeah, so they've done 11, they've had to ban 2. Like I say, hopefully they'll keep rebooting leaders going forward, and hopefully there will actually still be some good reboot leaders going forward. Like, I'm not super impressed with what they did with Mass Saiyan, and I am kind of wondering if that maybe was a response to the Gohan having to be banned and now this Mecha Freezer having to be banned, that they kind of realised they went overboard maybe a bit with those reboots, and now they're trying to like curtail the overall power of reboot leaders going forward. Personally, I'm of the opinion of I would rather they had to ban more reboot leaders than them just making reboot leaders terrible to begin with. Like, at least I got a few months of using this Mech Freezer deck. I had some fun with it. I know a lot of people did. Obviously, it wasn't fun to play against for a lot of people, but still, I think that's better overall than had they just not made the Mech Freezer leader as good as it was. If it came out and it just was bad from the beginning, basically nobody would have played it, and I think it's better all for some people to have some fun with the deck than just nobody to even consider playing the deck, really. So, but that's just my personal opinion. Maybe you feel the exact opposite way. You might think it's better for a card not to see play than to be stupidly, brokenly overpowered. I think it's, at a certain point, it just does come down to a matter of personal opinion. So then we have the cards that are limited down to 1, which are King Piccolo, the new ruler, which was a free play if you had a red unison with 3 markers on it, which was very easy to do. I know one of the best generic red unisons at the moment was Piccolo Jr., Descendant of the King, I believe it's called, which is 2 specified red and then has +1 of just draw a card. So I know that was being used a lot in conjunction with this King Piccolo card here. And yeah, just having you play that unison out on turn 2, plus it up, draw a card, and then you're able to play out this 15k double strike, I believe it was, for free, which is maybe a lot for certain decks to kind of deal with. Obviously, it's not outright banned, it's only limited to 1, so you will still be able to do that kind of combo, but you're just not going to be able to pull it off as regularly or as many times during a single game even as you were before. And it's a similar case with this Janemba down here. You could play it for free by, I believe, just bouncing a skillless card from your battle area back to your hand. So I know people were able to do that with the Gohan, the blue Gohan from set 13. This was kind of a option for that deck to run. You could run this and then the rest of the like Janemba Xeno chain. You could put the ball under this guy to go into, I believe it's the 4-drop, and then you could evolve the 6-drop on top of that. And I believe they even both, or at least the 6-drop, switches itself back to active when it evolves. So you get a lot of aggressive kind of attacks, even with the 3-drop here being a dual attack critical. It's still something, like, same as the King Piccolo, is still going to be able to be done. It's just obviously not going to be as consistent, and maybe when it comes down to it, like the Gohan deck I was just talking about, they'll just cut a lot of the Janemba stuff and find something else kind of degenerate to go in its place instead. That is the one thing to bear in mind with a lot of these bans. It's kind of a bit too early to tell if any of these decks are like straight up dead because of these cards being banned, or if they're just being brought more into line with kind of the rest of the meta. I'm really kind of interested to see what decks will begin to flourish with kind of the space that's been freed up in the meta with a lot of these bans and a lot of these decks being made weaker, I guess is the clearest way to say it. This has weakened a lot of decks in the meta currently. So yeah, that's it for the bans, that's it for the limits. I'll go over the errata now. There's another image that shows what the erratas are better. But the last thing to talk about on this image is that Universe 9 Assemble is unbanned. I mentioned it before. Basically, the reasoning band I gave for this being unbanned is that it punishes Universe 9 decks. They're not able to use this card, because obviously you could use it if your leader was mono yellow or a Universe 9. And so basically the whole reason it got banned was because Mech Freezer. I know a lot of people, when the last ban list was announced, they thought they should have just outright banned Mech Freezer rather than Universe 9 Assemble. And I guess the people that felt that way, they've been vindicated with this ban list. So yeah, this is good news for any kind of Universe 9 deck out there. I guess the Bergamo reboot leader is really the only one, unless you're using the original Bergamo for some reason. So let's move on to talk about the erratas. So Bandai put up this other image as well, which the parts in red kind of highlight what the changes are. So all these 3 Dark Broly's here, the 6 drops, they've been given a specified cost on their activate main. You now have to pay 1 black if you want to be able to play these guys from the drop area by sending 6 black battle cards from your drop area to your warp. So you have to do both. You have to pay the 1 black and send 6 battle cards from your drop to your warp in order to play them now, which obviously makes it a lot harder to play them all out during a single turn. So this is obviously a very big nerf to the Dark Broly deck. Again, I don't know if this is going to outright kill the deck. I think there is still something to be said for playing 30k battle cards for 1 black energy. Obviously with the additional cost as well of sending the 6 black battle cards, but still something to be said that maybe that is strong enough for the deck to kind of still see a decent amount of competitive play. Then there's also the fact that going forward they could maybe give the Dark Broly deck something else to kind of bring it back up power-wise, but in a more kind of fair way. They could potentially print more 30k 6-drop Dark Brolys with this kind of skill to give you more options for the deck potentially, which could, like I say, be a way to kind of buff the deck back up a bit without allowing the kind of overwhelming aggro pressure that it had before. So the changes to Planet Vampire and Tuffle, very similar. Basically they've just added this clause into both of them that if you have no battle cards in play, that's when you can get the effect. I know with Planet Vampire in particular, having played against it a few times, the kind of red Broly BR deck, it was just something they would do every turn. Even turns where they already had a full board, or turns where they were already like awakened, they would just keep doing it every turn that they possibly could. That's how good the card kind of was of getting you into the Broly chain, whereas this is a change to like make it so you can't have multiple different Broly chains going on at once on your board. You kind of have to stick to one at a time, otherwise you're not able to use Planet Vampire, which I think is probably a good choice overall. That really was a lot of the kind of unfair aspect of the red Broly BR deck from set 11, that they would start a chain and then you would do your turn, and unless you could entirely wipe their board, they would just start going into another Broly chain, and once they had like multiple different stages of the Broly chain kind of on the board, it just became too much to deal with. In the case of Planet Tuffle, it basically just stops all of their mono blue counter cards from being reduced. Basically it's just a way of making it so the kind of first one that you play on a turn is reduced, and then any other ones you want to use after that don't get the cost reduction. Or maybe even if you as the baby player, you were able to get a lot of counters out on the previous turn and none of them got removed, then it means you also don't get the energy cost reduction in that case, which makes sense. It just stops the baby deck from just building up a successively kind of bigger and bigger board every turn. Again, I don't think this will outright kill the deck. I think Blue Baby does have enough in its tank to kind of survive this change. Although I know that's not going to dissuade a lot of people. I think there are a lot of people out there that as soon as a nerf is announced for their deck, they'll just drop it immediately and move on to something else. I think in a lot of cases some of these decks can keep going within the meta. They don't, they're not outright dead. So maybe if you are playing one of these decks that have been nerfed, maybe just don't immediately drop the deck. See what happens with it going forward, because again, like I said with Dark Broly, they could eventually kind of buff these decks back up a bit in a way that's kind of not based around getting a lot of free players out. And then kind of for the last change, so Young Invaders, it had a similar change, I guess, to these Dark Brolys here, where its auto as well as its first activate main have both been given a red specified cost you have to pay to use the skills. Obviously this is to kind of slow the deck down with the way they were able to get out switching gears, in particular the Vegeta switching gears, I believe. As long as they drew it, they were basically guaranteed to be able to play it turn 1, at which point they could start like cycling through the deck. It also gave them a target for the big 5-drop, I believe it is, Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta, which is real pain in that deck. So this is just something that's going to kind of slow the deck down a bit. It's not going to necessarily make it so the deck is unplayable. It's just going to make it a bit more fair compared to some of the other decks that are out there in the meta, which I think is a good thing overall. Like I say, with a lot of these changes, I don't think I can really argue with any of them. So yeah, that's it for my thoughts on this change to the kind of banned, limited and errata list. If you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like. It really helps me out. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to be notified when new videos come out on the channel. And thanks for watching.